Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our very first meeting for ELI 815 Public Policy Leadership. My name is Jason Perez, and I'm going to be a professor over the next 7 weeks, which is still something I'm kind of getting used to saying. I'm used to doing 5 weeks. Being here at St. Thomas for so long under 5-week courses, making this switch is still a bit of an adjustment for me. I have taught this course multiple times, but I will admit this is the first time I've taught it in the 7-week format, and so it's adjusted a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. I like some of the changes that I'm seeing there. So I'm excited to get this course started, excited to be working with you, and let's just jump right into things because I know your time is extremely valuable and I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to share my screen. Now, I do apologize for this first session being a session that is completed not live, but just pre-recorded, but I do that so you can get the basic information that you need to be able to kind of kick things off with your coursework and not have to wait for a couple of days before actually hearing from your professor. So our weekly meetings will take place on Sundays at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, since that's the time zone that I work in. So most of you live and work in the Eastern time zone, so just adjust by an hour, so it'd be 6 o'clock p.m. for you. But I'll get into all that here in just a second. All right, so this is our class, and my expectations for this class are really not anything different than you would see in pretty much any other course here at St. Thomas. You are learning at the graduate level, so as such, you need to have strong writing skill. That should just go without saying. I'm going to be trying to work with a lot of you to help you get up to par to where you need to be able to be a successful student. That's my goal, is for all of you to be successful. Being that this is an online class, punctuality is very important. It's really, really easy to start falling behind, especially since so many of you are doing this class kind of on your own. You don't have an accountability partner. And so it's easy to just kind of put things to the side and deal with it at the last second, especially since doing an online class means you get to do it from home most of the time, which has a lot of distractions. There's a lot of benefits, but it requires you to be very self-disciplined. So please make sure you submit your stuff in on time, if not early, so you don't lose points for silly things like tardiness, okay? Here at St. Thomas, we use APA 6th edition. And so if you're not familiar or you have struggled with APA formatting, I like to recommend this source on top of the things that UCO may provide. This site gives you a lot of different examples of how to be able to cite different sources. And I think it's always handy. We're going to talk just real briefly about the most common mistakes with APA here in just a minute. But this is something that I always recommend, is to have this site available to you. Communication is always key if you want to be successful. I make it a point to go into my course room every single day, and so I kind of have a routine, and that's usually first thing in the mornings when I go in and check my emails and grade my papers for the day and make my comments and then move on with the rest of my life, since I've got another job and wife and kids and hobbies and all that other stuff, just like you. But if you have questions or concerns or emergencies pop up, make sure that you email me. I can't help you if I don't know what the problem is. And please don't wait until after it's too late to notify me of situations, okay? And I know that a Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. or 6 o'clock p.m., depending on where you're living at, isn't always ideal to be able to attend a Zoom meeting live. And so that's not my expectation at all. In fact, I would say that in my years here at St. Thomas, I have very few classes where I've had people attend the Zoom meetings on a weekly basis. It's always great to, but it's definitely not a requirement. However, if I could strongly urge anything, it would be for you to watch these Zoom meetings every single week. I will be going in and talking about every assignment that we do, giving you pointers, giving you tips, giving you feedback. And so what I have found is that the people who watch the Zoom meetings every week are the ones who pass this class without any problem. All right. What I typically will find is when I grade papers and I see certain types of mistakes, it's an indicator to me that that person did not watch the Zoom meetings, or else they would have avoided that simple mistake. So watch the Zoom meetings every week, and just to help me know who's watching and who's not, after you finish watching, go down to the reply section and just basically let me know, hey, I've watched it. or I viewed it, thanks for the info, whatever. It doesn't need to be a dissertation. If you have questions, that's a great place to post questions because other people get to see them. Maybe you're answering a question that somebody else might have as well. And so, but at the very least, let me know that you watch so I have some accountability for who's getting the information and who's not. All right, so let's talk just a little bit of APA. So I want to just discuss with you a couple of the most common mistakes people make when it comes to APA 6th edition. And the first one has to do with referencing a book. And so when you're referencing a book, a couple things you need to kind of keep in mind. First of all is citing the author. You're going to cite it by the author's last name and then followed by their initials. And then you can have the year of the publication in parentheses. Most people know this part here. This is not the part that gets people in trouble. It's the title that messes everybody up. The title of the work is going to be in italics, but here's the key, is that you don't capitalize every single word in the title. We're used to doing that. You're only going to title a couple of key words. You're going to capitalize the first word in the title. You're going to capitalize any words that follow a colon in the title. And you're going to capitalize any proper nouns that are in the title. So look at the example here that I've got. And so here you'll notice that I capitalized the word my, because it's the first word in the title. I capitalized Taylor Swift because that's a proper noun within the title. And then I capitalized the word and because it followed a colon. Everything else stayed lowercase. This is the #1 mistake that people make with APA 6th edition. So don't fall into that camp. Make that adjustment right away so you're not losing points for something really silly. I've had people that have gone all 5 weeks or all 7 weeks making the same mistake every single time, and every single time I will tell them you're overcapitalizing and they still won't correct. So don't make that mistake. Adjust your capitalization for your references immediately. All right, the other mistake people tend to make is that they don't include city and state. That's been a change to APA formatting. So make sure that you include city and state with the publisher information and, of course, the name of the publication company. All right, okay, so let's talk about if you are referencing a website article. Same sort of rules basically apply. You still reference the author information the same as you would with a book. You still reference the title of the article the same as you would with a book. But instead of the publisher information, you're going to put the website that you retrieve it from. But there's two things that people make a mistake on. This is the second area where people make the most mistakes. One is once you type in that URL address, your HTTP, www, so on and so forth, is that once you finish and you hit enter, it's going to turn blue and it's going to underline. That means that you've turned it into a hyperlink, which is hyperlinks are super convenient because you can just go in and click on it, takes you right to the site, no problem. The problem, though, is that APA 6th edition does not allow for hyperlinks, so you can't have them in your reference list. But they're really easy to fix. All you have to do is once it turns blue and does that underline, is right-click it and click Remove Hyperlink, and it'll go away. Piece of cake, no problem. The other mistake people make is that they want to just generalize the website. Like, for instance, with the example here, somebody may just put www.buzzle.com. Well, the problem, though, is that if I, as the reader, go directly to buzzle.com, it's not going to take me to this article on water aerobics, all right? It's just going to take me to the front page of Buzzle. That doesn't work. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to copy and paste your URL into my address bar and go directly to the article. So if the site address that you provide is not the exact one to get me to that article, you have done it incorrectly. So just make sure you do not make that mistake as well. All right, so just a couple things to remember as you're doing your APA formatting is that don't over-capitalize your reference titles. And I'll say that 50,000 more times because as much as I would like to be optimistic that everybody's going to get this right on week 1, history has shown me that that's not the case. Remember all your punctuations, all those parentheses, all those commas, all those periods, they count. So make sure that you have them in there correctly in your reference list. You want to list your references alphabetically. In this course, you're actually going to be doing a lot of research. So make sure that you list your references in your reference list alphabetically by the author's last name. And watch those dates. One thing that you will find with these assignments in this class is that we don't want anything older than 2014 as far as resources, okay? So you need to be really, really careful about that. This is another area where people lose points is because they don't pay attention to how old their references are. And the reason why is because if you pick a topic, we're in education here, so if you pick a topic about, curriculum intervention practices, and you choose an article from 1979, chances are there's been some changes to that particular topic area that have been updated, and your information that you're providing is out of date. So just watch the dates as we move forward, and always double check your references to make sure you've done them correctly. And that goes with your citations too. And that's where that Purdue website that I just offered up to you can come in handy. Always use research-based or valid websites. So things like Wikipedia, where people can come in there and edit them, they don't count. So don't always just jump to the very first thing that pops up on Google. All right, take your time, look through and make sure that the website that you've chosen or the site that you've chosen is actually a valid one for research. Okay, so in this course, it's pretty cut and dry as to when things are due. Is that what you'll find is that we have three types of assignments here. We have our discussion posts, and within our discussion posts, we have our peer responses, and then we have our assignments. Discussion posts are always due on Thursdays. Your assignments and your peer responses are typically always due on Sundays, okay? So it's really easy to remember. So with that, things are going to happen where maybe you have to submit something late. If you submit, let's talk about assignments first. If you submit an assignment beyond the due date, it's an automatic 10% grade deduction for the first week. So if an assignment's due on Sunday and you submit it on Monday, you're going to lose 10% off your grade, regardless of what your grade is. So please keep that in mind. That can be a killer to people sometimes. If it's older than a week and you have not submitted it yet, it'll be a 20% deduction for the second week. And if you go beyond 2 weeks before you submit an assignment, it will not be accepted. All right? So now within your assignments, every so often you may submit something that just really doesn't meet the standards that we're looking for. And so in that case, I may ask you to revise and resubmit the assignment in hopes that you will gain better mastery of the concept. Now, when this happens, of course, I'm going to give you feedback in your assignments. You'll need to make sure to always go to the course room and take a look at the comments that are in there. But within there, I'll always tell you, at that point, I'll tell you it's a good idea to maybe revise and resubmit. I will also email you to make you aware that you've got an assignment that I have put in a request for you to revise and resubmit. All right? Once that email is sent out, you typically will have 48 hours to revise that assignment. If within 48 hours you haven't done so, whatever grade you would have received on the original submission is the grade that will stand. So please make sure you're constantly checking your emails. Make sure you're always checking your grades to make sure that you don't have something you need to revise and resubmit. Now, I'm going to offer this up to you, but what I don't want to have happen, because we've got a lot of people in the class, and we've got some very lengthy assignments, and I know we do have some people that are perfectionists that if they get a 96, they want to resubmit it and trying to get a 100%. And while I don't want to squelch anybody's individual, desire to be able to reach their fullest potential, at the same time, we've got to be realistic in the fact that this isn't the only thing that I do, is just, grade papers. So I will offer it up to you if I want you to revise and resubmit. And keep in mind, if you're an individual that I've offered a resubmission to and you haven't taken me up on it, I may not offer it again with future assignments. I want to be able to see that you are engaged in the class, and if you're not engaged in the class, then I shouldn't have to put out more effort than you to be able to help you reach your degree. So all you need to do is just make sure you're checking constantly in the course room, and you're going to be fine. Discussion posts are a little bit different. So discussion posts are our one chance to really be interactive with each other in this class, and not just between the student and the professor, but between the students with the other students. And so this is a chance for us to learn from each other, and that's what the discussion posts do. So your initial discussion posts are due every Thursday. And the reason why is because in addition to the initial post, you're also going to have 2 peer responses that'll be due. So we want everybody to get their initial discussion posts in so that there's a lot to be able to read and choose from as far as providing peer responses. Now, if you submit your discussion post beyond Thursday, like if you submit it Friday or Saturday or Sunday, there will be a 10% grade deduction, not 10 point, excuse me, 10% grade deduction. Now, peer responses function a little bit differently because they are due every Sunday. Now, with a peer response, just to make sure we're clear as to what a peer response is, it is you responding to somebody else's initial discussion post. A peer response is not you commenting on something that I've written or you commenting on something that somebody else has written about your initial discussion post. Okay, you're going out to what somebody else has written and you're making a comment there. Now, I want you to be able to comment to what somebody's written on yours. This is how we learn from each other and grow as professionals. But that's not a peer response. So please keep that in mind. Peer response is you responding to what somebody else has put in their initial discussion post. All right, and those are due by Sunday. Now, Sunday is basically deadline day. So after Sunday, if you have not completed your initial discussion post or you haven't completed both your peer responses, you can't submit anything beyond that point. All right, because this is an interactive activity. And so after Sunday, everybody's ready to move on to the next discussion post. Everybody's ready to move on to the next week's assignment. They're not going to go back and read something that was posted late. So in that vein, the interactive nature of the assignment is kind of it is faltered when you don't submit your stuff on time. So initial discussion posts or any peer responses submitted after the Sunday deadline will not receive credit, and there is no exception to this rule. So always keep that in mind. Get your discussion post done early. In fact, you know, the earlier you can do your initial discussion post, the earlier you may be able to get your peer responses done, and the earlier you can be finished with that part of your assignments for the week. Because every week you will have an assignment, and every week you will have discussion posts with peer responses. So now you know the late work policy, and this is also in the course room in the announcement section where you found the Zoom meeting video clip. So you've got that information in. Introduction posts, make sure you get those finished, due by Wednesday. Always a great way for everybody to kind of get to know each other, and then they're not very difficult. As I mentioned before on the weekly discussions, the initial posts are always due on Thursday, peer response is always due on Sunday. The idea with initial discussion posts is I don't mind you using your opinion, but you need to be able to back it up with scholarly evidence. I really want these to be objective. I want you to really, it's a great chance for you to stretch your professional writing skills in a much smaller frame. But while these don't need to be dissertations, you also don't want to just do like a paragraph on an initial post. It's probably not going to get across what you need to get across. You are responsible for submitting, usually these are at least 300 words and also should include 2 scholarly references each week. So just something to keep in mind as we kind of move along with this. Always remember to include a reference list with your initial discussion post. Make sure it follows APA formatting. One thing I always like to bring up, because this pops up every so often, although it's pretty rare nowadays, but we used to have a lot of problems with this here at St. Thomas, where people would go into the discussion thread and they would either post a blank submission or they would type something and delete it. So what that would do then is that would open up the discussion thread so they could see what other people had written and then basically just plagiarize it. All right, that's considered cheating here at St. Thomas, and so that will result in deduction of points. So even if it's on accident, I can't tell whether it's on accident or not. So if you post a blank submission or you delete something in there, you're going to lose points. So always make sure you are ready to post before you go into the discussion thread and start typing. Peer responses, also remember, they're meant to extend the conversation. So just typing in, hey, good job, I really like what you posted here, is not going to be enough. Stretch the conversation out a little bit more. Okay, as I mentioned, Zoom meetings, always welcome to join live. These take place every Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. If you can't go watch them live, always view them. View the recordings, and the earlier in the week you view them, the more beneficial they'll be for you, since we're discussing everything that's going to go on for the week here in advance. All right, so let's talk about the assignments in this class, because for the most part, aside from week 1, they all lead up to week 7's 10 to 15 page research paper. And so we'll talk about the week 1 assignment here. I like to think of the week 1 assignment as almost kind of like pregame. Gives me a chance to see where your writing skills are at, give you some feedback in relation to what I would expect in your final research paper, so you can start thinking about making those adjustments as we go through the weeks. But you can kind of see that each week we are slowly building toward this final research paper. And I'm going to show you as we move through the weeks how you can make that week 7 not quite as miserable as it looks right now. So don't be intimidated by what you may see here. But let's talk about our first discussion post. And so in this course, there is no textbook. It's kind of open source material. And so you'll need to go into the modules each week. And so you've got a couple readings in this module. And the question really is, why is equity not considered as often as other issues? And for what type of policy issues should equity be a primary concern? And so use some of those examples from your reading and think about how should equity concerns be evaluated. So you've got 3 areas to really hit here. And so providing an initial post that's at least 300 words really should not be a problem. And considering that you've got some different resources to choose from right in the course, shouldn't have any problem either providing at least 2 scholarly references. So knock this one out. It's a great way to go ahead and get started. Remember, you can utilize some of your opinion, but I really want you to base your writing in scholarly evidence. If you're going to throw an opinion out there, be ready to back it up with scholarly information, okay? Initial posts due on Thursday. Your 2 peer responses due on Sunday. All right, so let's jump into what our first assignment is. Like I said, I look at this as kind of like a preview. It helps me see where you're at right now with your writing skill and where we can kind of grow. So you're going to be writing a 5 to 7 page paper explaining why it's important for leaders and managers of an organization or business to study public policy and understand its processes. So right off the bat, you probably want to jump into some sort of an opinion-based writing exercise here, and I don't want you to do that, okay? I want you to think research paper. You're not going to go digging quite as deep into scholarly evidence as you would with your final paper, but at the same time, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to write this in the first person. So there should be no I believes or from what I've seen or at my job or any of those things. I don't want any first person. You're going to write this from an objective manner, okay? And that also means that as you provide specific examples, you need to make sure that you have some scholarly evidence to kind of back those things up. So you need to do a little bit of research and see what different organizations or businesses, and maybe these are corporations like McDonald's or Walmart, or maybe they are career field areas like education or healthcare. You'll need to do a little bit of research in order to really be able to answer this question. Another thing I would suggest is take the time to kind of outline. You've got 5 to 7 pages here. And so you probably want to outline how you want to approach this paper. Because if you just start just writing, it's going to be very jumbled. You're going to go from one topic to another. It's not really going to have any flow or make any sense. So outline your ideas there first, base it in the research that you've got, so that way you can cite the information in there and it doesn't just look like you're just cramming citations into your paper that don't really have any connection to what you're expressing here. And so your paper should be clear and concise, obviously. So watch out for all those punctuation errors, misspellings, grammatical things, all that stuff. Okay, it's great to be able to include specific examples as much as possible. It makes the writing a little bit easier. It helps connect things. We can visualize it a little bit more. Not absolutely mandatory, but it does help. Do not, as you're looking at examples, do not start going really heavy duty into bullet points. Sometimes people want to like insert graphs or do a lot of bullet points in order to take up space. And so I don't want to see any graphs. I don't want a lot of bullet points. I understand that maybe like 1 or 2 sections you may need to have some bullet points in there, but I've seen people take up huge chunks of paper with bullet points, and I don't want you to do that, okay? You'll need at least 5 scholarly resources in your paper dated from the past 5 years. This is key. People tend to skip over this, but you've got to have at least 5 scholarly resources dated no earlier than 2014. Now, if you go beyond the 5, you've got your 5 in there, but you need more scholarly resources, I don't care how old those are, all right? But you've got to have at least the 5. After that, then you're fine. And then you'll want to follow the paper template. And if you're not familiar with that, you'll want to go to this assignment. In fact, let's go ahead and stop this just for a second. We can always jump back to it. And let's go to, goodness, hold on. I had this ready to go for us here. Just so everybody's familiar with the format, I want to make sure you know. So if you go to this assignment, and you probably are familiar with this, you've probably seen this already, but I always want to make sure. You go to the assignment and you go into the instructions here, and you'll see right here a link for the paper template. And so as we pull this up, it automatically does an Excel spreadsheet for you, or excuse me, a Word document. And just a second. Here we go. Okay, so it's got the template ready to go for you here. And so this is the template I expect to use because they're making it so easy for you, okay? And so this will be the format that I expect to see from you for any of your papers like this, okay? So when it says paper template, this is what they mean. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to it here. Okay, so I want to give you some examples as I was talking to you about what I'm looking for in writing skill. I want to give you some good examples and some poor examples here. So let's first of all take a look. Now these are actual snippets taken from projects from this class, okay? And so I want to explain to you why, the reason why this is a good or a bad example. So let's take a look at this piece here, this paragraph that somebody submitted. And so look at the highlighted part here. It says, public school teachers never think about raising a child God's way because they have no reason to think that way during the course of a day. So that's a pretty bold statement there, and it's obviously an opinion statement. All right, since I want you to try to write like a researcher, there's no place for opinion in these types of papers. And so to have that in there, if they were going to put that in there, then they would need to really back that up with a lot of evidence, okay? So if you're going to have an opinion in your paper, you better be ready to back it up with scholarly evidence immediately, okay? And so that's one example right there. Let's take a look at this one. And this, once again, is another paragraph from the class. And let's look at this. It says, it's important for leaders and managers of any corporation to understand public policy because it widely varies, and understanding policies from one organization can be beneficial to the organization. Managers and leaders that understand public policy can prepare employees to better handle the business of the organization and understand how they should approach a difficult situation, so on and so forth. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you. You can read it for yourself, but you can look in there and see some grammatical issues. One thing that really stands out to me here is that there is a lot of advice, a lot of opinions in here, and absolutely zero scholarly evidence to back any of it up. All right, you are not being deemed professionals as you go into this course in the sense that you are experts in the area of public policy leadership, okay? So as such, we want to rely on the experts that are out there already and use their insight in our writing. And so while you may read this and go, well, it sounds reasonable. I mean, it's better than the other one that talked about, about public school teachers. But still, how do we know? As the reader, how do I know that the author actually is giving me sound advice? Like, where's their expertise? This is where scholarly evidence comes in handy, is that we lean on those who have done the work to help influence our writing and our thought process. And so I want to give you one more example. Let's look at this one, very short. But this one says, the salaries for teachers are not competitive and the public education field may be losing great prospects. Opinion right off the bat. But let's continue on here. In fact, Hanashek reports that this subject is frequently argued that one of the most substantial problems of education is the low wages which dissuade many not only from entering the education field, but keeping those already in it. So boom, they have an opinion, they back it up with some scholarly evidence. This is what you want to strive for. And if you really look at it, this is not all that difficult to do. So as you write, just kind of keep in mind that, hey, I want to write based off of the research that I have done, rather than just based off of my own personal experiences. And notice with this, it's also not written in the first person. And there is no I believes or I've seen or any of those things. There's also none of this, which I see a lot from people too, is that it says research claims, but then they never cite what the research is. or most people, but they have no research to back that up either. So those types of comments just basically sound like somebody is trying to cover for their lack of research by making their opinion sound like it's been researched. So be really, really careful about that as you write. So there we go. You got a lot of information here in this very first meeting. But that's kind of how the first one goes. I will tell you that most of the Zoom meetings will not take 30 minutes to do. And so plan on just setting aside a time every week where you can sit down and watch this Zoom video if you can attend live. I highly suggest that you do it Sunday evening or Monday evening, probably at the latest, so that way you've got the rest of the week to use this information to influence the work that you do. And otherwise, if you have questions as we start with the course, make sure you shoot me an email. And as I said, I check them every single morning, and so you won't have to wait that long for a response. But I look forward to working with you over the next 7 weeks. It's going to be very, very exciting. It's going to go by fast. And I think that's it for this week. So take care. Good luck out there. And I look forward to reading all of your introductions. Take care. I'll talk to you next Sunday.